Here we go. Welcome to Control Talk 2.0. I am joined by three of the top people in the HVAC and building automation controls industry. I am joined, as usual, by the man, the myth, the legend, Ken Smyers from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, in addition to being my co-host on Control Talk Now and co-partner on ControlTrends.org, also is a partner at DMS Controls out of Pittsburgh, so he gets his hands dirty every day with controls. And speaking of dirty hands, our next guest is Rick Warner, a.k.a. the Innovator. And if you want to know what a Master Systems Integrator looks like and the Master Systems Integrator of the future, you need to look no further than Rick Warner, OEMFacilitiesEngineering.com. And our last guest is the one who's going to keep us all honest here, one of the most brilliant women in our industry and actually in multiple industries, because we're blessed to have her now in the building automation controls business. Her name is Therese Sullivan. She has a blog called buildingcontext.me. The man, the myth, the legend, I, Ken Smyers, talk about Therese a lot on Control Talk Now. You should check her out. She also does a lot of work with Ken Sinclair, building automation, automatedbuildings.com. So there's your panel. The topic of the day is IBCON Real Comm and how it's going to affect our industry. So I'll take some opening comments. What do you say we start with maybe the brightest person on the call? Rick, you and Therese are kind of tied for that. So let's start with Therese. Ladies first. Therese, overall, sort of what was your take on IBCON Real Comm from broad strokes?
Right, broad strokes. It was a terrific show. I think that it really showed a coming of age of, we're entering a new phase of this industry where other people are coming to this building automation merger of building automation and IT, and the IT folks are just knocking on our door. And I thought the way especially Intel, Rick Lisa, when he said, they've really been studying it, and they can only go so far working with the OEMs. They've got to work with the system integrators. That was a gathering of system integrators, and I think specifically that pre-day event, the System Integrator Summit that you emceed along with Ken Sinclair, Eric, was really terrific. And the kind of people and the caliber of people, the rock stars that came to visit us at that show, I think just showed the importance of where we are right now, this pivotal moment.
Oh, completely agreed, Therese. Completely agreed. We definitely had some rock stars there, which we will be talking about on the show. All right, Rick Warner, from a systems integrator's perspective, what was your take on IBCON Real Comm?
Yeah, I'll just key off of what Therese said. I think the caliber and quality of people that were there. I think the folks that were actually at Real Comm can really consider themselves or the IBCON and Real Comm can consider themselves fortunate, because I do think, and as I looked around the room, I've known a lot of these people for 15, 20 years. They are some of the folks that are the heavy hitters in the, I guess what I'll call the convergence technology, the IT meets smart building automation type stuff. So the pre-day, or I guess the VIP day, I guess I'll call it, was absolutely great, because I think it really got a lot of the like-minded folks together in one forum. It also created an opportunity to do some networking and meeting some folks pre-con. That was a great idea. Some of the other things that I found extremely interesting were the different technologies, and then what they also offered was a cross pass over the Infocom as well, which I think there was some innovative technologies displayed over there. But overall, again, the caliber, quality of people, some of the technology displayed, and not only the convergence of different technologies, but I see a lot of people starting to pull on the rope the same direction, and then obviously a lot of innovative technology in the seams there. So it seemed to me to be a catalyst point or a fusion point for this conference.
Well, absolutely, Rick, and I want to get back to you because one of the things that Jim Young and Howard Berger have been calling for is an upgrade to what a systems integrator does, and you know, and he has cited you as we have as being, you know, one of the guys who really understands what's required of a master systems integrator. So we'll probably come back to that as we go on. But our next comment, I want to get Ken, your overview from the man, the myth, the legend standpoint. What was your take on IBCON?
Well, I just was very impressed. Again, we were there last year. I was just going over some of the posts that we've had, and just to give you, some feedback. We had posts on day 1, day 2, and of course the pre-con. But Intel was probably the biggest, most exciting thing I saw was that Intel announced their intentions to get into the building management space, and as did Dell. But I realized the impact or the import of Real Comm in IBCON, how we were missing it, years gone by in our building management mentality. That the real customers are out there in the real estate market, and the commercial markets, and the GSA markets, and they're being driven by the Real Comm IBCON force. And then I think that we're going to see an adoption rate of this technology, as Rick mentioned. We've got this convergent technology where you can literally see the stacking happen. We have Intel, and they bought Wind River, and they bought McAfee, and they're going to put a product on a piece of equipment, and bolt it to another piece of equipment, or put it on a controller, and then put it on a panel on top of a roof that's connected 3G, 4G wireless. And so they figured out a lot of technologies and converged into one solid product that they can sell. I think we're going to see strategic acquisitions and partnerships as a result of this IBCON Real Comm meeting. I mean, there was too many intelligent, important people that realized that the partnerships and acquisitions are going to get them there quicker. Because now I think we literally have a race. As Therese says a lot of times, the contextualization of our existence now through our smartphones and smart pads is becoming a reality where the disruption that occurs in our households are now going through our business. And people expect that kind of innovation and that speed of innovation to occur. So I was just really impressed, and I think that the
well, it's good stuff, Kenny. Good stuff. I do want to. I know we got a lot to cover here, and Kenny.
I just want to cover one more thing, just to give you some feedback. We had a post about the day 1, and Intel. Somebody from the post responded back to the recap where we said the Intel is entering their E2E is entering the business space. A gentleman named Steve Adams posted that the Intel Quark SoC X1000 product is a definite game changer for the building automation market. It is definitely something to keep our eye on. Very exciting stuff. So the last point I was trying to make that I almost lost it for a second was that it seemed like everybody's all in, and it seemed like it was very sudden, and it happened at the Real Comm IBCON, but it looks like they were in this a long time before. There's been a lot of preparation.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny. So I do want to get everybody's opinion, because it was a little bit like going to the same dance all the years at your school, and all of a sudden, 10 new beautiful women showed up that you'd never seen before. And I'm talking about Intel, Cisco, Dell, Apple. All these new people showed up at this conference.
Cisco was there before, though.
Yeah. So I want to get Teresa.
Cisco just had a new dress on.
Pardon?
I said Cisco was there before. It just had a new dress on.
There you go. There you go. So, Therese, give me your take sort of on how you see these new players coming into the market and the ramifications it might have. And then I'll ask Rick, and then I'll ask Ken.
Right. Well, I think one of the interesting things, I mean, Cisco, so we have to talk about that a minute, that Cisco was there before with Mediator, and had a product that had a certain amount of momentum with some developers, and then it went away. Then they did a reorg, and this was just an appendage that they didn't need. And I would say that was about 2 years ago that they sort of shut. They bought a good company out of Santa Barbara I think it was called Richard Zeta, and they turned it into a Cisco product, but they really didn't follow through. But I think they learned a lot, and Jim Young actually said Cisco, Rick Hubert, I'll simplify his name, but he does real estate. He manages, so more comes rather than from the technology division of my neighborhood, Cisco in Silicon Valley. He comes from Canada, and he's more been managing their real estate portfolio. Really would fit in well with all the people that are in Real Comm, and he's a great blogger and everything too. But the fact that he's their spokesman right now shows a different message about Cisco, that they're not going to try to disrupt everything with their technology. They want to have supportive technology. In their other initiatives, the wider, they're talking now about fog computing. And to simplify, I'll say that's something I do cover on my blog too, is that orbit around the IP layer where people are talking, supporting the IP layer with, you have to read about fog computing. But anyway, I like that Cisco is leading with their real estate guy, and who really has had a strong and long commitment to the convergence industry. Longtime contributor to AutomatedBuildings.com. He really gets our industry, so that was great to see him on the stage. And then Intel. So I still see Cisco bringing the internet connectivity, their routers, and this fog computing layer. Intel, the soundbite I got from them was, you know, a brain on every piece of equipment. So if you have the air handler on the roof, they were talking about edge processing, move some of that. So fault detection and diagnostics, I guess, is the easiest application to think about. But if there's a CPU on the roof on that air handler, and they're taking every little bit of data to see all the sensors that might indicate that some piece of equipment is falling into an intolerance area, they're only going to deal with the exceptions. So that's a good thing. The brain is processed. They talked about edge processing. That's what it means to me, that up there on the roof, because that air handler now has a brain, has a CPU, an Intel CPU right there, that not all that data from every sensor that's also maybe on the roof needs to be transmitted to the cloud or to an on-premise database. They can deal with it right there in that brain and say, we're only going to deal with, oops, there's an exception. Something does look like it's going out of whack. Then they're going to send the alert, do something. But I think that's really important difference about what Intel's message was where the processing is going to happen. So that was my kind of big Intel takeaway, and that they're partnering with these various companies like Dicon, which I think you interviewed later,
Right.
Ken.
Mm-hmm.
So those were two big messages. I think the Google guy was there kind of sort of as window dressing, that they're there too. They bought Nest, but there was no big message there.
Okay, I might have to take a little exception with you about that. I don't know, you know, if it's all friendly. It might be, and I don't know that they have anything that they're really bringing to the table new. They might, but I tell you who probably will have an opinion on that, I'm hoping, is the innovator, Rick Warner. So you see Intel, you see Cisco coming. Are they bringing anything new? Like Therese says, they're bringing the edge. They obviously got that technology. Is it a good thing? Is it going to add a lot, Rick, or are we all in trouble? What do you think?
I think what we have right now is we've had a strong period of what I'll call sustaining innovation or sustaining technologies. It's come in increments, dribs and drabs. The people that are the stewards over our industry, in my opinion, haven't done a very good job of innovating it or changing it in ways that are meaningful to the end user. So I think they are. I think the message is they are looking to, you know, Obi-Wan or Google or Intel or somebody come save us. I think that's the message, because the market studies, and let's be clear here, what's drawing everybody to this market is the $40 to $50 billion in projected growth. And I've validated this a little bit, or maybe this is anecdotal, but one client I was talking to has about $1 billion pipeline right now of what I would consider, you know, smart grid, microgrid, those type of projects on tap. So the proposals and RFPs are out there. Getting back to the technology, I'll key off again what Therese said, and it's what I've said for a long time, is intelligence at the edge. So if I was to point to a product that's probably gotten close to that, obviously the Tritium Jace is something that's got close, but it really hasn't pushed further to the edge. If you start looking at products, and at least in our industry, there's obviously been the Sysmic guys as well are starting to touch on it, you know, based on the Sedona products. But I think Intel is possibly, one of those things that could be what they call disruptive innovation. Time will tell. So I think what the industry is going to benefit from these folks actually coming in is I think it's going to force everybody to again take a look at things from a technology perspective. Where are we? How are we prepared at solving the problems? Again, clients that have bought into these large-scale integrations and have decided to.
Does anybody know what that is? That background noise?
Ricky, I think you got to put your headphones in. You got some earbuds. I think you might be feeding back.
Oh, is that me?
I think it is. I tell you what, while you're working with that, we'll pick back up with you. Yeah. But Kenny, I'd like to get your opinion. What you saw with Intel, Cisco, and some of the other people coming along. What do you think? Good thing, bad thing? How do you see it shaking out?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad Therese did that clarification again about what she saw as far as what's happening at the edge, and putting the processing at each unit instead of sending it off into the cloud and having these tremendous processing. It really isn't necessary. I think if somebody can mute their mic, if we all practice.
Right. I'm trying to look for mute.
It's right in the center bar. If you put your mouse in the middle of the screen, second icon to the right.
Yeah, second icon to the right. I'm sorry about that. I could ask.
Or first, see the microphone? See the microphone? Put your mouse in the middle of the screen.
Yeah, just be sure to unmute when you speak.
Okay, I see it. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah, I think we're seeing some yard work out there in California. Anyhow, what Therese said was very, very good. Again, because we all have our jargons and our esoteric way to explain things, but I think that's it. And Rick is right. We've taken the small steps where we take sensors to controllers into web-enabled controllers and out into the network now, and we're seeing some great analytics and some great data visualizations. But now what we're seeing now is the smart guys, their smart step is coming in and they're putting that computational capabilities right down there at the equipment level, so it restricts all the flow of unnecessary information, or like some of the things with the integrators they talk about using law, and you just get overwhelmed with the number of snivets and stuff, and all you wanted was 10 pieces of information, but you got to deal with 500. So, but I thought that was really good. But I think too, just to complete my all-in concept, where you had the big six, the big conference people. We don't have to say them again, but we have to include Tritium being there and Yardi being there, because, as Jim Young meant intentionally, that those are the bookends. These are the people who have been in the industry for 20, 30 years and have been our stalwarts, or the stewards, as Rick mentioned. But what I got a real kick out of was Dell, how this was all kind of like very handsomely driven into a release information. So they waited until June 17th and 18th to release their intelligent building white paper. So here you have Dell now saying that they're introducing new research on smart buildings, and they will join Intel to discuss its findings at the IBCON in Las Vegas. So this was a very cleverly, or importantly, orchestrated event, and I still just can't get over that. It's like, it's still exciting to me, because it's going to change. It's going to challenge everybody. And then Dell takes it further, that they're going to go into the building management systems, that they're going to actually service. They're going to be a company that provides services for building management. So that's going to really impact.
They said they're going to be building systems integrators. They want to compete with guys like Rick, it sounds like. So, Therese, you and Rick are both muted, so when I ask you the next question, be sure to unmute before you come back on. But, it sounds kind of benign and sounds kind of good, but I think, Therese, you were at the forum that Ken Sinclair and I hosted. I think, Rick, you were there too, but if you weren't, the Intel guy gave a really compelling presentation, and in that presentation he was basically saying, for the rest of you guys, building security is a problem. You guys are all talking about how you can't get past the IT people to get your systems in. That's not a problem for us, and I would agree with that. I think they really got that part of it handled. But he made a statement along the lines of, hey, we can go from zero to having a system installed and working and online paying back in 10 days, maybe less than that.
10 weeks.
I think I got that quote right. Teresa,
10 weeks.
Do you remember that? What do you guys think about that? Them sounds like fighting words to me.
That was 10 weeks, Eric.
Oh, 10 weeks. I thought he said 10 days. It was 10 weeks?
That was 5 weeks to get in and get installed, and 10 weeks to start showing an ROI.
Okay, all right. So, Rick, is that pretty good stuff? that's probably pretty much standard for you guys, right?
Well,
I would say there are a lot of days when I go out to do systems integration that I end up not doing systems integration. So we're in projects right now that it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, I agree that the Intels and the Ciscos of the world, they can put in Cat5 networking infrastructures, but I would liken that back in the days of the dot bomb. If we could go back to that, I was on the cutting edge of that with a lot of the data centers. There was a lot of people that build infrastructure data centers. They put a ton of money at the backbone, but what they failed to realize, there wasn't the last mile, so it killed them. They could get it. They could get the internet to within basically 10, 5, a mile to your house. They called it the last mile is what killed them. So there was no fiber to the curb. So they could deliver all this information off the internet to these data centers, but they're basically had the 56K modem was the only way you could get it to your house. So huge misfire on that part. I think I see the same thing with these folks. If they don't, I'll say it this way: if they don't embrace folks like me and figure out how to work with us, and if we can't figure out how to join hands and sing Kumbaya, it's going to be tough for the clients, because I think there's going to be a lot of empty promises. Yeah, just put in our ask it for name solution. We can integrate, A to Z, and then overnight your building's going to operate better, and it's going to have better energy management. I could probably give you a baker's dozen list of companies that have come and went with that same message. So I think
I just keep wanting to pop in, like say, like Cisco with Mediator. That's kind of the scenario that happened, and then they were gone in a day because. And it wasn't even about what Mediator was doing. It was about the greater company needed to cut back, and that was an easy thing to cut back on.
So Teresa, is your take sort of, it seems like what you're suggesting is you think they're smart enough this time around to realize that they need people like Rick to be successful. So are you seeing this more as they're going to be reaching out to people like Rick and trying to work with them, as instead of doing like a Dr. Evil thing and just doing a complete bypass and shutting us all down? Is that sort of what you're thinking?
Well, it was fun to go to the expo, to booth, and hear what other people said. But my big takeaway was from that slide where it was sort of the animation where they said, oh, we worked with the OEMs, and I filled in the JCIs and the Schneiders. That's not going to take us anywhere. We can't go to the end user, to the real estate people. And then the big middle slide was, we are here. We really have to recognize the system integrator. These are the people we want to partner with. So I thought they got that message, and I think they should have, if they had a sense of history, as Rick also said. If they have a sense of history, they should have this message that nobody enters this building area.
Yeah, very, very smart people. I suspect that the reason they're some of the top companies in the world is because they learn from their mistakes. So Ken, I want to ask you a question. So I think they're definitely have to work with a systems integrator. Ken, what do you see the role of distributors like Stromquist and Company and DMS Controls and all the people we're involved in? How do you see them being affected by this by what's going on?
Well, I usually intermittent, from extreme fear to extreme confidence that we'll be in the game and we won't be in the game. I just want to revisit the thing about Cisco. We, once upon a time, were big Richard Zeta distributors, and we sold a lot of it up in the western Pennsylvania, West Virginia area. And that was kind of catastrophic the way that ended, and it left a lot of people with very sour tastes in their, school districts, the mush market people, because hospitals. It was the perfect solution, and what they were good at, what that thing did, is it was protocol agnostic. You put that in the building, and it did what the Jace did with even more of a, with more liberties. It went right to train, went right to, Network 8000. So we were using it, really, where we had. Impasses with certain equipment manufacturers like Train, because they had their proprietary, and they didn't want to share. They had the market, and they had the strength to hold their market, and they had a service arm to enforce it. So you mess around with them, then they say, okay, fine. Next time we come around, you got to go upgrade it to this. And so there was a need for solutions, and the people that drove it were the users, the school districts, the universities, hospitals. They said, we'll do anything. Let's try anything. Well, at that time, here comes the mediator, and it worked and delivered. Cisco jumped on it, caught it, and I think to what Therese said, they thought they could do that in the cloud. They thought that piece of hardware. First, they were going to reduce the mediator from this big to a blade in a blade server, and then do the same functionality. But what I think about Cisco is I was working with William McGowan, the director of Smart Connected Real Estate, Cisco Systems Canada, and I was walking through the conference with him to go to our we did the session on Smart HVAC. And he was telling us what Cisco is doing, and it wasn't quite the same as the old Cisco coming in with a mediator, the equipment part. They want to go up into they consider themselves to be the fourth utility in a building. They see themselves as you got electricity, lighting, plumbing, and then you've got Cisco. So that's where they're coming from. They're not coming back into the control business and integration that way. They're going into the buildings that provide they're going into the technology. They want to be up. They want to take it from the building to the cloud and back. So I think they'll work with systems integrators, but they already have a channel that does the IT side of it. So our business that works with with buildings and works with master systems integrators and probably a level below Rick. Rick operates in a level above us. He goes national. He's global. We work in kind of exclusive areas, Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and we have people that are certified in that Niagara AX, and they won't be. They're going to be challenged in this new environment. When people aren't going to use their integration because they're going to have other ways to the thing that scared me about Intel, literally, was that they said that our protocols were already inclusive into the thing they're bolting onto their equipment. So that means that all the things that we've been good at, they call those lower protocols, and it's done automatically by their whatever normalizes their protocols. So that scares. That got my attention.
Well, Kenny, let me ask you all you guys a question. So that being the case, it seems like it's going to be a lot simpler. The protocols are already there. One of our compatriots, Scott Cochran from Cochran Supply, made a statement that you still got to move air and water through a building. So let's just take another cut at this. I'll get all three of your guys' opinions. Could it be, by it becoming simpler, the problem, at least at the controller level, the problem of the master systems integrator becomes a little bit easier, because is it going to be easier to get the data from the unit and the controller to the front end? So maybe these guys that are threatened shouldn't feel threatened. They should embrace this because they're going to be able to be more effective. Could that be a possibility? Rick, I'll start with you, then I'll go to Therese, and then back to Kenny.
Yeah, when I was in my section, and I guess Bill McGowan was there, but they were asking, the question was, well, what do we see the future holding? And the statement that I made is that I see the systems integrator is currently constituted as going away, or the systems integration business as currently as we understand it is I think it's a dinosaur at this point. So it's just a matter when the meteor hits the Earth. But in that sense, but if you think about it. I consider it a creative disruption. So the way I see, and teeing off Scott Cochran's point, Scott is very perceptive by saying that, because you still have to move air and water. So what I see is, as opposed to a great refrigeration mechanic or a great tradesman or craftsman, kind of hunched over a laptop and trying to hack in points into a copy of Workbench or ALC web control, that person's actually going to be at that piece of equipment working with a little bit more of an intelligent controller and optimizing that equipment. So if you look at the difference, look at what happened to chillers, the old controls with chillers to now with the Max-E's, so from York. So I think that's what you're going to see is a almost a domain divergence. So what we've already taken strides the last couple 2 or 3 years. I've changed personnel, changed technology that I'm training my folks on.
we're actually becoming more, data scientists, or we're building scientists, if you will. So that's so for us, all the things that they were saying there, the normalization of the data, the semantic modeling, all that kind of stuff. That's things that we've been working on for for years. If you go back to the guys at ControlCo, kind of got it right with the data eye thing, with their, they were doing tagging in their stuff in advance of Haystack. You look at the convergence of the profit, where you had a smarter or a rich internet application like the DG Logic combined with the analytics back end. So what I'll say is, what Therese said before, Intel and these guys have been working on it for some time. It just isn't like they just sprung it in 2014. There's technology that's been out there that's been just kind of plotting, in the seams. And it looks cool on the face of it, but when you look at the technology, you look under the hood, it's actually really extremely interesting and innovative. So I think it will drive. There will be a flashpoint. But getting back to the point, I think integrators as currently constituted are not going to be in business, as is the same thing with the distributors and the solutions providers. So I think what the IBCON, to bring this full circle, I think what the IBCON provided folks is, if you do have vision and you are seeing what's going on, you'll be able to course correct and be viable in the next 2 to 5 years. And I think that's the important thing with these these convergence and these gatherings, these tech gatherings, is you have to move faster. If you go back to, just to sum this all up, if you look at Don Tapscott's speech at the Niagara Summit, and that's a guy that I've read from time to time, the Wikinomics thing, but his Grown Up Digital, I think, kind of captures where we are. There's a quickening in our industry, and if we don't leverage the talent and we don't point the talent at they're working on a speed that's 2 to 3 times faster. They expect results. So working with the folks and getting that talent directed at this solution, I think, is really going to be the key. And that remains for Intel, Google, Johnson Controls, Honeywell, Siemens, or whomever. They really have to get it's going to be a talent acquisition and issue for these teams. So the folks that align with the right talent, leverage that to their technology, and drive that to the client are the ones that's probably going to experience the most growth or take advantage of what's coming down with this. So
okay, so Rick, so what I'm hearing you saying is it's going to change. That it could get easier at the controller level, but if you're an integrator, you're going to have to upgrade your skills to keep up with what's going on. So I hear you saying it's sort of inevitable. It's here. It's happening. Deal with it. And Therese, from your perspective, the original question was, in a backward sort of way, could this new technology, could it be solving the problem that Jim Young sort of stated, that the systems integrators are having trouble keeping up? Is this going to make it easier, at least at a controller level, or from your perspective, is this a good thing?
I think it's an inevitable thing. I'll move our conversation a little bit to bring in the other thread, which you started with, security. And you said, well, in Intel, we do have this security issue, that everything that's online is vulnerable. And Intel certainly is up the learning curve. There was both Intel and Microsoft there, which brought you Wintel in the PC world, and that really opened up the world of the hackers. I mean, they've got only through lots of bumps and bruises does Intel and Microsoft really understand security. So I think that it has to happen for the security reason that players like Intel have to, and they have been really built-in security. I think Kenny and I were discussing at the show. Their answer to security will be embedded. It will be hardwired versus some software kludges to security. And that's what we need, I think, at the point in time we're at. I really liked that Billy Rios was there. And I brought out in my little article for Automated Buildings that Billy Rios he's with Qualsys now, but before, I can't remember what the other company was, but it was more of a consultancy, and he directed McKinney's on setting up a honeypot and starting to look at how many times BMS systems that are open to the internet, how many times they're hit. So that's just a reality in this world, and a big change, I think, for a lot of the existing system integrators to think in a security type way, and that's why I think you need this Intel mentality.
I like it, and that was Billy the Kid Rios. We actually have a video of him on control trends at that one of the conferences. We haven't posted it yet, but we will. Definitely worth checking out. Teresa, I think very good point about maybe they got a handle on how to handle that whole hacking security thing. Now, Kenny, maybe you and I are going to be affected the most in our day jobs, our distribution businesses with this advent. You alluded to it earlier. The systems integrators are maybe not at Rick's level are really going to have to adapt. So let me pose it to you based on what you're hearing from Intel and maybe Dell and some of these people. Is it going to be easier for these guys? Is it going to take less programming and that kind of stuff? In a way, could this be a blessing in disguise for these guys that they're going to have the tools to sort of jump ahead a little bit, if you will?
Well, that's a couple questions in one. First of all, I think that to correct something I said earlier, I think there's scale. I think that the big guys, Intel, Dell, they're going to go after certain markets and they're going to get their share of that market, their share of blood. I think that for our integrators, if they're willing to move forward and not stay in that sweet spot and understand it, this is like a NASA launch where after we see this space thing happen, we see this Real Comm IBCON event happen, all these great people and minds, all this incredible disclosure of information and technology. Well, all these things are going to spin off, So the idea is, like Rick said, align yourself with some new vein of opportunity, and take your skill sets and modify them accordingly. And for us, that's what we're doing. And it's in social media being kind of an underlying current too. But I see scale is very important, not to get out of hand in time. Rick was saying that when you get the people with deep pockets and very serious motives, and goals and objectives, they get there a lot quicker than what we're accustomed to. Our world, if something's bad, it takes 6 months to fix it. The next patch. Well, these guys are going to go throw all the weight that they need to fix problems immediately and move them, to remedy problems and issues. So you're going to see different timelines in different markets. So I think we're going to see stratifications where the dumb will get dumber and the smart will get smarter, and you're going to take a chance to get on the smart side of it and or just stay where you're at. I think that what Teresa said too is about the security, how that could be a game changer. In other words, we're trying to fix security on the network where it might be at the source of the information when it's sent, that it's already secured, and that's what to me with Intel and what Mike McAfee was saying, and I don't think anybody's catching on to that, how that might be something really important to take hold of and start thinking about how what that means if you're trying to do security a different way. So like I say, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for as many threats. There's that many opportunities, and it's just how you look at it, and where you want to make your play.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you, Kenny. So let's take another cut at it from another level. So you're Tritium, you're Honeywell, you're Johnson, you're Siemens, you're Trane, you manufacture all these controllers, and now Intel, it sounds like it's going to be embedding a lot of these functions right on the equipment as it comes in. Again, I'll ask the same question. I'll start with Rick again this time. And Rick, so if you're a Honeywell or a Johnson Controls or a Trane or even a Tritium, are you in jeopardy of being sort of X'd out of the game?
Well, I'll be provocative and just say this from my perspective. I find the current state of the technology is a barrier for me to doing what I ultimately need to do for the client, and that is solve their problems, advance their issues. Take the information, or take what's being measured from their system and provide value, make that building operate better, make that building more efficient, make that building leverage more information to drive more value. You look at so from that perspective, the way that it's currently, I spend more time going back and fixing problems or addressing issues or interfacing with a proprietary building automation contractor to get them to map a few points. I have one project I'm trying to do a mobile dashboard, and I've waited a year for the client's existing building automation contractor to map up 300 or 400 points. So I welcome companies like Intel to doing that. So I guess what I'll say, to sum that up, to be extremely provocative, if Intel does what they say they're going to do, then yeah, they are in trouble, because it's difficult. Most manufacturers, and they have notoriously done it, even though you have open protocols, it's still difficult to make their system work, because the way that they program the functionality of the system is all proprietary. You have to have their software. You can only get it through their people. You can only do, you have to be this person. It's only open to certain people. And so they're creating barriers to getting the information up. So they calculate metrics and success in a different way. So if your metric is, points integrated with your technology per client, then okay, that's a win. I look at different metrics, problem solved per client, energy saved per client, so for me as a systems integrator, the current technology is very frustrating. Tritium has advanced the ball, I think, with their next generation applications and their open, I guess their IT. They will make it easier. So to your point, I think they should be concerned. I don't.
Rick, I'm going to help you out because we're working on your character here as the innovator. So what I want you to do is I want you to lean into the camera and your best innovator voice say, the innovator says you should be very, very afraid. Okay, I'm putting you back on camera, so 1, 2, 3, go.
You should be very, very afraid.
There you go. That's why he's the innovator, and that's why he's the talent. Therese, what about from your perspective?
You're muted, Therese.
You're muted, Therese.
I'm still muted. I think the yard work is over, but I agree.
We know what happened. You were so impressed with the way Rick said that you should be very, very afraid. I mean, that just Rick. You got a career in Hollywood. You need to go see Therese out there. Forget about this systems integration business.
I scared myself.
We need a new bad guy.
Yep. Well, but I'm not near Hollywood.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I basically agree. I think you guys are closer to really the personality of the integrators, so would know that better. But I think that they're adding value. The only other thing I always have one point is I love when the slide went up at Intel and it was legacy buildings bolt on, because that's that's a huge market, and there's so many buildings that aren't addressed at all because of cost, because of staff. And if you could make it cheaper and easier to make buildings more comfortable and more energy efficient, there's a huge market. There's nothing but growth out there, right? I mean, for new buildings.
You couldn't agree more, Teresa. And that's what guys like me and Kenny and Rick go after. So that's where this is where it gets interesting in my perspective, because that's where a lot of these manufacturers are teed up to go after that market of the buildings that need to be retrofitted.
Mm-hmm. And easier retrofitting.
Well, that might be why they should be very, very afraid. If they're truly going to make it easier, then I think what I'm hearing from Rick and what I hear from a lot of my customers is they can love me all day long, but if somebody's got a better solution that's going to take better care of the customer, they don't care what brands I handle. They're probably going to go with that easier solution. Fair statement, Kenny Smyers?
Yeah, I think it's very fair, but I think I've been sitting here trying to think of if I want to say this, but just as a testament to what Rick said and what Therese said and what we're thinking is that the rapid product development that these people are capable is scary. Because here's a printout. I know it cost a tree or two trees, but it's the rapid product development for building automation and energy management, and it talks about a case study. So this is right, it's very verifiable. Early in 2012, Infergence, a newly formed company in Richmond, Virginia, approached ADI and asked for the creation of a prototype for a new embedded automation product within 3 months as a basis, as a demonstration at one of the summits. Okay, so ultimately the case was that in 3 months they were able to produce 3 functioning prototypes at different levels of complexity for this summit. And so in 3 months they went from concept to idea, and it was actually an inversion unit that they demoed at the summit. I think what's going to happen is we have to get off of the idea, or we have to become. I think your comfort zone. We're disturbed right now. I think this disruption thing is turning into going from talk about being disrupted to literally disrupting our business channels. And I think that you're going to see big players like Johnson, Siemens, and Honeywell respond very quickly, because that's what they're good at. They've played this thing, it's like a cash cow, where they've had the opportunity to take these things as far as they can get them. Now that they see, it's like the American automobile industry almost. We waited almost too long to go ahead and transition into the competition we were getting from the Pacific Rim, and we're getting from Western Europe. Now we're seeing this in the control business, almost the same type of thing, where you'll see our guys. Of course, Honeywell's global, and so is Johnson, so is Siemens. But in our North American market, they've enjoyed a very stable, non-disruptive environment that's going to get shook up pretty quick. So two years from now, next summit, you're going to see products that you wouldn't believe. One last thing I want to say too, Eric, is we don't know the information anymore. Like Rick was saying about, he has better merit structure on saving people energy and saving people problems or solving them. The thing that scares me about one of the frightening things is that we won't control the information. Like Therese was saying, if the information is being controlled by an Intel unit and it's going to Intel to be processed in their version of the analytics or whatever, their cloud services, then it takes us completely out of that revenue stream. We're not working in that anymore. That's another thing we've got to think about.
Well, Kenny, very, very good point. So here's my question, and Therese, you might have a feel for this. So if you think about it, and by the way, we got to sit down with the folks from Intel, Rick, and they are super smart, super professional, super courteous. So it's a great caliber of people that are coming into the industry. So we thoroughly enjoyed meeting these guys. But I'd read in the past that Intel's their business is about selling chips. That's what they do really, really good. Well, guess what? Every one of these controllers that we sell, from Honeywell to Johnson to Siemens to Trane, they all have chips in them. I think most of them have Intel chips in them. So, Therese, could you see a scenario if they got too good, too close to the market? Did these guys get together, I'm talking about the Honeywells and Siemens, and go, hey, you guys either back down or find a way to include us, or we're going to put a different brand of chip in our controller? Could it go down that way?
Well, Intel is always considered the expensive chip, and the foreign manufacturers are never very far behind them of doing something comparable. And I think that's why they really bet. There's two things that buzz in the Silicon Valley recently, is that Intel is betting the farm on the smart grid, and betting their farm, and that was a while ago, and then I'm sure it's percolating in there, that there's a lot of divisions of Intel focused on selling to utilities and getting Intel smart chips into the grid, and now they're working the building side. But so I've heard more of the buzz about their chips and security too, because of course the smart grid is another point of vulnerability, and Intel had to come up with another feature of their chips that differentiates them, that they want lock-in too. I mean, they're a monopolist. They're used to monopolies too, Intel is, and that's why I think that, again, they're here in those two areas, because if they can own this security and say it's got to be this McAfee security fabric, you've got to have something that matches up, then that allows them to eliminate a lot of Chinese competition that can't replicate. You're not going to get into the handshake, but because you don't have that same embedded security. That's like a new monopoly they're really after. So it's a little bit scary from that standpoint too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does, and again, that might be a very positive solution for what's going on, and maybe that is not as threatening to the people that are making the controllers. And when you look at, I think people make the money in our industry, at least I've been told, and Ken, I'll get your and Rick's opinion on this, not on selling the software. They're making the controls on selling, the money on selling the controls. So I think as long as that aspect's not being threatened, I don't think the manufacturers are going to care that much. They might just embrace it. They can put an Intel chip in or something that allows their controllers to be more secure on the network. They might really like that. Maybe the casualty in that case would be distributors like me and Ken. Probably not a guy like you, Rick. You're going to still be in the game, but Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So do you see, how do you see Honeywell, Ken mentioned he sees Honeywell, Johnson, and Siemens responding in kind. Super smart guys. They've been at it for a long time. They really understand the aspects of moving the water and air like we talked about. Based on what you guys are seeing, is there enough of what's being introduced or the concepts being introduced, i.e. the controllers and that from a Dell, an Intel? We hear rumors about who they're working with, so pretty powerful players that really understand controls technology, and Cisco. I mean, is there enough new and different and far enough ahead that these guys might have trouble catching up, or are they just different in a different way, and maybe the Cisco and Intels are going to have trouble catching up on the control side? You know, Kenny, I'll start with you and then go to Rick on that question.
Well, I think, again, we've seen some pretty smart executives take the circumstances at hand. You know, does the circumstances make the leader? Does the leader respond to the circumstances? You know, so I think they're going to get that. I think that they're going to take a look around and they're going to measure how fast, and they're going to come up with their risk assessments and their market assessments, and they're going to decide what they're going to do quickest. But what I think will happen is you'll have some strategic acquisitions, so that when the time's right, they're going to come into synergies. They're going to buy things that they can't do themselves. I think Honeywell and Johnson all have been always a little bit slow to watch people develop certain things and see just how much of a market penetration they're getting with data visualization, with the analytics and whatever. And then when the time comes, I think they can come back at any, when the strategic point, when it's right for them, they buy it. Or you can't beat them, buy them, and that's what I think is going to happen. Yeah. I think partnerships. I think that you're going to see people being driven to become partners that didn't want to be partners, and share, like what Teresa was saying, share in some of the potential markets and the gains of those markets by coming together for periods of time and creating synergies that get things done faster, and they both get their share of the skin.
You heard it first on Control Talk 2.0. Honeywell plans to buy Intel. All right, Rick.
Is that possible?
What do you think, buddy? What's your take on that?
Well, I remember at one point in time I got consulted on the purchase of Honeywell by Schneider at one point in time back in 1999 until or actually it was General Electric actually was going to buy Honeywell and splinter off the controls. So Honeywell almost didn't exist in 1999, if you can believe that. So thanks to the EU, I think they quashed that deal. So because they didn't like Jack Welch. So I think some acquisitions will happen though, and I think they need to happen. I was questioned by a large controls manufacturer, and that's been 6 or 7 years ago, what I thought about their product line, and I said, you got too much stuff that does the same thing. So I think what we have in our industry, we got too much stuff that does the same thing, and it all gets to a certain point, and it gets difficult. So what the building automation manufacturers have done to themselves is they've done a pretty good job at doing some nifty hardware, innovative in certain ways, but what they've all done is tried to push it into their same funnel or maybe their own fog bank. I'll key off of that. So so you ask major brand A controls contractor what's the best software to use with their automation system, they're going to tell you our XYZ system, and when in reality that's a delusional part of this. So I think the way I'm seeing it right now, what's going to happen is there's going to be companies out there that create the visualization or the aggregation component that solves all that. So if that's an Infergence box or Tritium Gen 4 or the next iteration of whatever major controls manufacturer leaps makes that leap, then I think that those are the controls companies that can bridge that gap. The second thing is with hardware, it's going to become a commodities piece. So if you look at what happened in the industrial automation arena when there was that convergence there, it's really the pieces and parts have really become ubiquitous. So you have one major player in Rockwell, and then there's all this other boutique tech. I like the Modicon stuff. The 340 series stuff works, but you can get stuff from Automation Direct. So I really see clients at some point in time ordering, I'll take a pallet load of these controllers and can you ship them to my building, and they'll have someone install the retrofit, and that'll plug in no different than the printer that I just got. I just plugged in, auto recognized, provisioned a couple things, and it was installed in a half an hour or less. So I think if you look no further than the printer market to tell you how air handling units are going to get deployed, they're pre-done with control. So I think the controls companies that can align better with the equipment manufacturers and drive that tech to the edge, as Therese said, those are the ones that are going to fare better. But I think there will always be a need for ubiquitous hardware as these big smart buildings and smart grids get built. But
cool, and then there'll hopefully be need for ubiquitous hardware salespeople like me and Kenny. So,
yeah.
So guys, we've been going at it for about an hour and 15 minutes, and we were going to sort of break the whole conference down, and we're still just sort of on this first topic. So I guess first question I'd ask, any chance we could get you guys to come back on maybe in a couple of days or next week, and we could sort of finish this thing out, because there was so much at IBCON Real Comm, but this is obviously one of the biggest topics, I think, and one of the most interesting dynamics of the whole conference. So, I'll ask you guys one final question, sort of about this, and you can answer whether we want to come back on or not and finish up another time or not. But Intel, Cisco, Dell, Google, all very, very upfront, and I kept hearing over and over and over, Apple's here. Okay, and I don't know whether they were in stealth mode or what was going on. So my question for you guys would be, did you get a chance to talk to Apple? If so, what were they up to? And why won't Tony Fadell come on our show? Ken and I keep asking him. So Therese, I'll start with you. Do you run into Apple folks there?
I did a sneak attack. I went and talked to Lutron, because Lutron at the what they call I think they call it the Worldwide Integrated, or Apple's big developer conference that happened a couple weeks ago, and they announced a home automation product. Tiny on the slide was Lutron and Honeywell. So if you had Lutron and Honeywell, and I'd already written about that on my blog, that if you looked in the Lutron filed a patent a while ago that they wanted to go right from the cell phone to high-speed Wi-Fi, not having their own routers. So it was like patents about kind of cutting out a big part of those green boxes that are the Lutron routers, and that is starting to happen. The deal that they're getting is between the Apple iPhone and Lutron, so that you'll be able to work their shades and their dimming controls from your iPhone. And I would say that's a pretty big threat to Nest if you had Honeywell and Lutron and Apple together. So yes, and so the Lutron guy said yes. He really laughed and smiled at me, and he's going to put me in touch with their PR person to ask those questions about where they're going with that.
Cool. Rick, what about you? And Therese, you're going to be working with us on this, so I know you're coming back on. Let's get to the innovator. Did you catch up with any Apple folks there?
No, I sadly did not. I heard the same rumors you did. Did not run into them. I didn't even get a chance to do a sneak attack or tackle anybody from Apple. But I will leave you with the final thought. I think really your problem, Eric, is you're like the Bill O'Reilly of video blogs. That people are afraid to come on your show.
No way. Do you think Tony Fadell was hiring Apple people to take me and Ken out? That's what they were there to do. We
Tony, I never said a bad word about you, Tony. Not one.
Yeah, actually, Tony, it's all Ken's idea. He's the one who's really got his feelings hurt that he won't come on our show. But that's right. You're always invited, and you're welcome again for us getting you on the cover of Time Magazine.
Listen, don't forget that you had the iBeacon app that was throughout the Real Comm show. The Real Comm
that was fun.
iBeacon, yeah, the iBeacon app harnessed the power of Apple's iBeacon technology and indoor proximity system that was really cool. So as you went close to a booth, you were given that building contextualization trace that you talked about, where it was following you around, it was telling you what was coming, how many feet away you were from a booth or whatever. So it's kind of cool, but the Apple was there. It's just they didn't. I think what happened there was they're observing, but. Let me ask
Apple is everywhere, Kenny, and I'm a big Apple guy. I love Apple stuff, so I'm good with that. So listen, I think we still got a lot to break down about the IBCON show. I mean, there was so much there. Therese, Rick, let's try to get you guys back on maybe next week sometime, and we'll wrap this up. And we won't talk at all about Google and Intel and those people because there was so much more to the show than that. But that was one of the biggest buzzes going on there. So with that, I tell you what, I'd like to thank our guest, Therese Sullivan from BuildingContext.me. Therese is a blogger extraordinaire. Be sure to check her blog out. And, of course, the innovator, Rick Warner from OEM.
I'll be back.
OME
for you, Eric.
FacilitiesEngineering.com, right, Rick? Is that the right website?
Yeah, OME Facility Solutions, yes.
OME Building Solutions, and Rick has solutions for you. And the one thing about Rick, if he ever leaves your building, he will always come back. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Ken Smyers, DMS Controls Group out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my partner on Control Trends and Control Talk Now. Hey, I thank all you guys very, very much. Until we meet again, stay in control.
Stay in control. Good sign off.
All right.